Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special session of Voices of Inclusion, the virtual edition of the Best Buddies Leadership Conference. I'm Gustavo Soriano, the Senior Director of International Programs at Best Buddies. And today we have put together a great panel for you titled Inclusion Interrupted, where we will try to make an analysis of the impact that the current health crisis is having on diversity and inclusion in the workforce. Joining me today, we have some very special guests, and I'd like to start with a quick round of introductions. So I will ask each of our panelists to please take a minute to introduce yourselves and share with us a little bit about your organization, the role that you have at your organization, and your relationship with Best Buddies. So let's start with the ladies first. We have with us Becky Kekula from Disability In. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Becky Curran. I'm the director of the Disability Equality Index at Disability In. I've been with the organization for almost 3 years now. And in my role specifically, I manage a benchmarking tool that companies take to assess how they're doing when it comes to disability inclusion across the enterprise and the ways that they serve their communities, especially those with disabilities. In the index particularly, we try not to call out specific disabilities because we want to be all inclusive of the whole disability umbrella, but there are some specific questions that are helpful to those in the communities that are neurodiverse. And I would say that that's kind of the collaboration with Best Buddies. And then at Disability In, we also have a Next Gen Leader program, which is a mentorship program for students with disabilities or recent graduates. And they get paired with our mentors from corporate partners of ours. And they're able to get that constructive feedback they need to then successfully enter the job market.
Thank you very much, Becky. With us, we also have Madeline Bourquin from I4CP.
Hello, everyone. My name is Madeline Bourquin with I4CP. I am the Vice President and Executive Sponsor for our Chief Diversity Officer Board. And the Institute for Corporate Productivity, or I4CP, is a research organization. We've been partnering with Best Buddies for a number of years, and we've conducted 2 studies on behalf of Best Buddies on hiring, or the impact of hiring people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as most recently in the last 6 months, inclusive talent pools. And so we basically study the people practices that drive high performance for organizations, and we study across all practices, and diversity and inclusion is one of the key areas that we study.
Awesome. We also have 2 colleagues of mine. We have Chanel from our Best Buddies Jobs program. Hi, Chanel.
Hi, everyone. So I am Chanel Brisbane. I serve as the Director of Jobs for the state of California. I've been with Best Buddies for a little over 3 years now. And in this role, I'm overseeing our 6 different locations here in California, including Long Beach, Los Angeles, Fresno, San Francisco, and Sacramento. And I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. We also have Pauline. She's going to help us as well during this session. How are you, Pauline?
Hi, I'm Pauline November. I'm an employment consultant in the Boston office. I work with our participants in their jobs to support them, whatever it may be, all around the city, to support, inclusive jobs. And I actually work with Dudley, who you're going to hear from in a minute.
Thank you. We also have my friend Horace. How are you, Horace, from American Tower?
Hi, well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Well, like you said, my name is Horace. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for American Tower. Basically, American Tower is a real estate investment trust and owner and operator of wireless and broadcast communications infrastructure. So when you see the towers out there on the rooftops and also fiber optics, that's what we provide. We provide the infrastructure. And carriers like T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon are our customers in the United States. I've been involved with Best Buddies for around 10 years. And currently we have buddies hired in American Tower in Mexico, in Colombia, Brazil, Chile, and actually we're hoping to continue that. And actually I started my relationship with Best Buddies when I was in MasterCard, where we also hired some buddies in the Miami office and across Latin America.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, we have Dudley Williams III from John Hancock. How are you, Dudley?
Good evening, Gustavo, and to everyone else. I am doing very well. I am Dudley Williams III. I am the marketing coordinator for John Hancock, and basically what my job title is that I help with the sponsorship marketing department with various projects, including with the Boston Marathon and the Best Buddies Challenge. I also help deliver and sort the mail, and during the time in the pandemic, I've just been trying to stay busy working from home, and we will just be working from home until at least late September or later on in the year.
Okay, thank you. And actually, Dudley, I'd like to stay with you, and so you can get us started. As you have been a Best Buddies Jobs Program participant for many years, can you share with us how has the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, affected your work at John Hancock? Are you working from home? Have you made any adaptations to your day-to-day tasks?
I am currently just working from home at my apartment in Somerville, and I've been working from home since March the 13th. The pandemic has really affected me a lot because we were supposed to do like the marathon this year, and that also just got canceled. And some days can be good, while other days can be a little bit tough.
Okay, but how's your routine day to day? Maybe Pauline, you can help us. How has the routine changed?
My routine has just.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dudley.
My routine has just been affected dramatically because usually on a normal day I'm up by like 7 o'clock and leave my apartment by like 7:30. Would get to the office around like 8:15, 8:30, and would usually be done by 4:30. Now, with the pandemic, I've been finding myself sleeping in a little bit later than normal, and also sometimes staying at work later than normal, sometimes past like 5:30 or 6. So it's so hard for me to have a good starting point and a good stopping point.
Dudley, do you want to talk about too what you've been doing, how your tasks have changed, your new project you've been working on?
So this project I've been working on is a PowerPoint project, and that is just get to know a lot of my coworkers outside of work and what they've been doing throughout this whole pandemic. What I've done is created it into like a PowerPoint spreadsheet and turned it into like a book for all people in the entire marketing department.
So Dudley's actually been interviewing his colleagues who he knows and who he doesn't know from the company, because it's a really huge company. He's been doing Skype and Teams meetings, interviews, and then gets a picture of them and puts it on a PowerPoint slide, and then hopefully we'll make it into a book, a real physical book that they'll have in his office when we eventually hopefully get back into the office. So I think that's been a great addition, a great project for Dudley, and it'll be a great thing for the company.
Great. No, so I'm really happy to hear that Dudley, that you're adapting really well to this new reality. But is that true for most of our participants? And Chanel, I'd like to hear from you. Is that what we're seeing out there on the field? How has this pandemic affected the population we support with our program?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of major changes, and I think one of the hardest things about what's going on is no one actually knows what the procedure is or what to do, and it changes day to day. So even when you look at our numbers of people being laid off or people going back to work, if we pull numbers on Monday, they've drastically changed by Wednesday, because even all of our different offices across California, you can't really predict what's going on, and each have their own kind of way that they are adapting to the shelter in place. And so I think we've seen a lot of different changes when it comes to the individual themselves. I'm seeing a lot of increase of anxiety And a lot of the individuals we serve, it's a lot of different changes that they can't predict. And I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the same way. We're all being flooded with all this different news information, and we don't know who to trust or what to rely on. And we're reading and we're taking it in. So as a staff, we've taken a lot of time to address that on a weekly basis, make sure we're answering any questions that they might have. On the work side of things, we are also seeing a lot of changes. So for those that are in office positions, we've either had to help them adapt and work with their employers to create at-home work responsibilities for them, while also addressing the barrier of those who don't have access to technology, because that is huge for a lot of these individuals. For those that aren't able to have office jobs and were just temporarily laid off, we've had to address unemployment, finding temporary jobs, and now as we go back to work, how to address the safety issues, especially for those with sensory challenges and just being kind of overstimulated in the workplace.
Right. Thank you, Chanel. Yeah, the impact has been great for our participants. Outside of the United States, we have seen something really similar. As most of our participants saw their jobs affected, we had about 30% of them that were unfortunately furloughed or terminated. But I'd like to move it to Horace. Horace, is that what we're seeing also in the corporate world? How has this pandemic affected your company?
Well, I think that actually we've been pretty lucky. Our business is we're a B2B, right? So really we don't deal with retail. So in our case, we really had to unplug from the office and plug in at home. And actually it was business as usual almost. We don't have people in the field, and our construction maintenance is outsourced. So really, it's everything has flowed into a new normal for all of us, thanks to also having the proper IT tools, the proper connectivity. And also what the company did was actually provided with additional allowances or actually additional tools for our employees, to work much more comfortable from home, which includes even furniture, includes, desks, chairs, monitors, whatever our employees were needing. So in the case of American Tower, we didn't see that. However, in our customers, there has been an impact in the business and how they do business. So we see a little bit of both, challenging for our customers, but in our case, it's been business as usual. We have our buddies, working with us. We have to adapt a little bit, the tasks, because there were some that had a lot of work with documentation, and of course now being virtual, that documentation somehow disappeared for the time being. But we're adapting to that. We're keeping track to make sure that they also adjust. We're working with your colleagues in the countries, to get the support, and we even have found some new I would say opportunities. That, for example, we have one of our buddies in Chile that he is very proficient in English, right? And so what ended up happening is that now what he is doing, he is actually coaching a couple of employees, to improve their English, right? So basically what they do is they interact with him in English, right? And he's a native, he's native from Chile, but he's so good in English that actually he is now, helping our employees, to improve their English skills too. So, that's a little bit where we are today. And I think that, we're pretty fortunate that things are going well with us.
Great. Yeah, you make some really great points there. And having those points in mind, I'd like to switch it to Madeline. Madeline, this health crisis was a sudden change for everyone. And it's only been a few months. I know it's complicated to make a proper assessment, but have you seen any major trends in how this pandemic is affecting companies and people with disabilities working at these companies?
Yes. So the week of March 10th, I4CP chose to host weekly calls with employers. And so I have the opportunity every Tuesday at noon to meet with hundreds of employers on a single call. And so I did observe a shift. A significant shift. So if I think about back in March, some of the key challenges and issues facing employers was, are they ready? They weren't ready. Not everybody was ready. Not every organization was. And so we dealt with furloughs and layoffs and isolation and access and accommodation and support. Well-being, stress, all sorts of things were happening all at once. Parents at home working with children, all sorts of things. And so those organizations that really stayed focused on inclusion prior to COVID were a little bit more prepared than others. And so we started to see then, I would say towards the latter part of April into early May, a shift in thinking. And so organizations that were agile enough and ready in this time of disruption were able to give access to their employees, make accommodations, have empathy, be more flexible. So all of those things that really needed to happen when I think about the definition of inclusion or the traditional inclusion, what one employer said to me is, this has been the great equalizer. Mm-hmm. For many. So if you just think about all differences for individuals, this has been the great equalizer. So now fast forward to the middle of March the middle of May, and employers are now really thinking through their return to workplace strategy. And what that, and there's also the difference between essential and non-essential employees. So that's another area that we need to think about. But when they're thinking about return to workplace, they're also thinking about their culture, their purpose, their brand as an organization. They're thinking about the organizational challenges of safety, right? Safety in general, the space that they actually have to come back to. A number of different things. And so again, support, accommodation, well-being is coming into play as they're thinking about return to workplace. And what I love is how employers are really thinking about that return to workplace, and they're thinking about it in terms of from one end to the other. And so the best example that I could give you is, and the easiest example is if I think about returning to the workplace and I think about the person that might have one arm, right? If I accommodate and I stay focused on that person with one arm, I will accommodate that person who has a sore arm, that person who's holding a cup of coffee, and a whole bunch of other things. I will accommodate every single situation if I can think of both ends of the spectrum. And so organizations are really thinking through return to workplace and their different strategies. And I love what Dudley, how the company it really thought through reimagining work. What an amazing project. And that's how employers are going to be thinking about it for everybody, is reimagining work and bringing work to the people. And that could be at the workplace, it could be at home, it could be someplace else.
Correct. Yeah, you make some really great points. And Becky, I'd like to hear your opinion as well on the same topic. What have been the major shifts that you've seen?
Absolutely. So I was actually on my honeymoon in Hawaii during the week of March 8th, and we returned on the 16th. And right when we returned, I realized that this is real and it's going to be a long time like this. But fortunately, in the role I have, the organization I work for, we've always been remote. So that piece of it didn't change for us. But we were anticipating planning an in-person conference that happened just this past week. and we had to shift it to virtual. So it was a lot of reimagining how panel discussions and plenaries and networking events could look in a virtual format. And then the index that I manage, the Disability Equality Index, the timeline for submissions is April is when people have to submit their DEI. So then I was reading over 200 reports, which actually it was a benefit to be home to be able to read all of them rather than being on the road. Because we work remotely, we are asked to travel a lot of places to meet with our corporate partners or educate people about the Disability Equality Index. So that was a benefit I had as I was reading all the reports and learning about company best practices. But there were a lot of challenges. A lot of companies weren't confident about how they were going to fill it out because everything was uncertain. And then I think the uncertainty will continue on, and we have to continue to support our partners in every way possible. So we have about 220 corporate partners. And what we did as an organization is we really brought everyone up to speed on what was going on by sharing best practices among industries on how they are handling the COVID crisis. And then we even had some calls about managing the return to work plan. And even with all those calls, nobody has all the answers, but we want to continue to push out resources that companies can benefit from. And about a year or 2 years ago now, our organization used to be called United States Business Leadership Network, and now it's called Disability In. So we took US out for a reason because we want to continue to work on global policies and practices as well. So we created a global directory that profiles 30 countries and how they identify disability and resources that people can use as they're trying to advance disability inclusion in those specific countries. Recently, I did a presentation in Mexico and it was all digital. 108 people showed up. So it's effective still, even though we can't physically travel places, we're able to reach a much larger, wider audience. As you mentioned, this conference reaching globally, lots of people who can learn a lot from each other. We're fortunate that this platform will allow for that, but we do know that in person also has a lot of value as well. If there are technical glitches with presentations, you can have a little back and forth dialogue with the people in the room and work through it. But when there are technical glitches on a webinar, there's not really that interaction that you can have in between as things are getting set up. And I think people continue to crave that and miss that. And hopefully we'll get to a point where we can safely present in person again in the future. But for now, this is the plan. It works for now, and we'll continue to reach as many people as possible.
Right. Great. I've used your resources at Disability In, and they're amazing. So I'll highly recommend them.
Yes, they're all most public. A lot of them are public on our page.
Right. And Madeline, you touch upon a really interesting subject. Unless you are an essential worker, you're most likely working from home. And I'm wondering how this shift in culture is affecting people with disabilities. I would first like to go back to Dudley. Dudley, now that you're working from home, what type of support have you received from Best Buddies and Pauline specifically?
So Dudley, do you want to talk about some of the virtual things?
Like their lunch brunch calls at least a couple of weeks, few days a week. Also, just be able to talk to my coworkers from work just to see how they're doing.
Dudley, do you want to mention the workshops you've been attending as well?
Yes, I actually have been going to like the Best Buddies workshops almost every week that they do it during the week, and just expanding like my learning and more of my professional boundaries.
Really great. Yeah, no, and I think it's great that you have all that support from Pauline. And I want to ask Chanel, has there been any major adaptations that we had to make to support our participants working from home like Dudley?
Yeah, I've been honestly just so blown away by all of the Best Buddies job staff and how innovative they've been, and they've really met the challenge. I think in this situation, it was really easy to freeze, but they took it on and just with stride. And so Here in California, I can speak more specifically to how we've really adapted our programs. Our main priority has been to ensure, even if someone is at home, that they're still professionally and personally developing. A key aspect is Best Buddies is all about inclusion, right? And a lot of how the individuals we serve are kind of included in a lot of their social interactions. When we think about it, we all go to work every day, and like that takes up a good chunk of how we socially interact with people. So when you take that aspect away, you take away their social engagement. So we've created social opportunities so that they're engaging. Here in California, we have statewide events ranging from leadership trainings to weekly calls where everyone gets to interact. On a job side, to ensure that they're professionally developing, we do everything from weekly check-ins, making sure that their mental health is okay, they're getting outside still, exercising, maintaining their health, and that they're professionally developing in the sense of going over their vocational goals. I've seen my team just create so many innovative tools to help them. If someone's vocational goal is to be a cashier, developing at-home tools so that they can practice counting money, working on their social skills. If there's a skill in which they've wanted to advance in their job, or they have a career path that they're really passionate about, taking this time while we're all at home and we have the chance to do so, to work on those skills, whether it's like learning a new program or getting on the computer more. And then we've also had the opportunity to also incorporate our employer partners and do really great workshops where our employer partners firsthand get to tie into our mission and really see the amazing work and how employing someone with a disability just wonders both for them and also for the person with the disability. And they are doing workshops on how to create a resume or a cover letter or interview practice, or how to give a good presentation. So overall, just really trying to make the most of this virtual experience.
Right. No, it's amazing the work that all our employment consultants are doing all across the world. And so the question goes now to Horace, Madeline, and Becky. What are your thoughts on the shift to a work from home culture, both overall for companies and for people with disabilities? So let's start with Becky.
I think there are a lot of positives to this. I think we're learning that more people than we thought are capable of staying disciplined and working from home, and it will take down the barriers of transportation that may be difficult for someone to get somewhere on time. But I think there's also a lot of thought behind the return to work process and how the disability community doesn't want to be ignored when it comes to going back into the physical space. So we need to be mindful that it would be great to make it known that those people who ask for an accommodation related to work from home could get that request fulfilled. But we also want to be mindful that we don't want to go backwards in the physical workspace. So we want to make sure that the doors are open in both places, because even among the whole disability community, we all have different experiences. But I think there are people who may not identify as having a disability who would prefer the work from home format as well, to manage family, work-life balance, and long commutes. And then I think what we've learned is that everyone's human through this whole process. So you will see people on video chats doing things where they're having to tell their family to be quiet, or their dogs or kids, and it's just kind of the new norm. And there's also a lot more of people using their camera for chats that maybe they wouldn't have used otherwise in the past, and those check-ins of how are you doing before we get into the meat of the conversation. And I think that can translate to the preferred style of interviewing, asking someone, how are you doing, before going into the questions, because you'll get to know that person, get rid of the elephant in the room, and move forward with a productive interview and conversation.
Right. Madeline, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm actually going to, what Dudley said, and Chanel and Becky, the way the way employers are really, they have a strong emphasis on culture right now and purpose and their values. And so part of that includes the diversity, the inclusion, the belonging, the equity. So the things that they can do to strive for that utopia of inclusion are things caring for the employees, really looking at well-being from a holistic perspective, looking at it from mental and emotional to physical to career to financial, all sorts of things. And so organizations are really creating innovative ways to just reimagine the workplace in general and focusing on upskilling and reskilling the population. So the examples that Chanel had shared. The other thing is just going back to the reimagining work and what it looks like. And so organizations are really studying and staying focused on an internal marketplace. And so when I think about the example that Dudley and Horace gave around really customizing and reimagining what that work would be and thinking about it through that Hollywood model. And so if you think about you have the director of the film, right? And that's the project. And then you have the actors and the stunt people and the technical people, and they execute on that project or that film. And then the job is done, right? And then they move on to the next one. But you're leveraging the skills of those individuals and the passions of those individuals to create the work or to fulfill the work, shall I say. And so that's the exciting part of what's happening right now, is really that emphasis. Organizations have to focus on culture. They have to focus on inclusion. And part of that is the diversity piece, is the belonging piece. How do you ensure that people are belonging? And then reimagining what the workplace looks like. What I love the most is the emphasis on leadership accountability. They are holding their leaders accountable. And those leaders really need to walk the talk, and they have to trust, they have to be patient, they have to be authentic, they have to be vulnerable, and all of those things in order for everybody else and that culture to have that, for everybody else to have the same experience. And so that's the beauty of it, is leaders are being held accountable for it. And guess what? Organizations are just not tolerating it anymore. And so that's the beauty of what's happening right now. But there's still a struggle. And so I think we all have to play a role in reimagining what this is going to look like.
Correct. Horace?
Yeah, one thing that, we've seen, and probably based on what I mentioned before, for us, it was a little bit of a continuation. We didn't really see a disruption in our company. So we have, of course, a lot of people, and, we have been running surveys asking our employees, how they feel, what do they think, what do they expect. And there's, there's a large number of employees that basically are indicating that they have a preference to continue working from home, or at least with sort of a mixed structure, which is a couple of days in the office and a couple of days from home. Because for lots of those individuals, it's been an improvement in their quality of life, because they don't have to go and get stuck in traffic, use public transportation like Latin America, be able to spend more quality time with family members, and you have the other population and some other employees that basically they need to go to the office because it's better for concentration, et cetera. But really, it's a big shift overall, and it goes back to what Madeline was saying about the culture, right? And that's probably one of my, and I would say our concerns in American Tower, because we see that we work, we see that we're fine, in that sense. But that's, the several thousands that we are already here. We're thinking about the future. If we continue this way and we need to bring people on board, how do we transmit that culture that you really obtain by being in the office, walking around, grabbing a coffee, next to the water cooler, those informal conversations, and that atmosphere that you can actually see, perceive, and live within a company just by you stand there, right, in the middle of the offices or workstations. You already start to feel that culture, and it's very difficult to do that virtually, right? We're trying to see what things we can do because we're hiring people, right? So we're trying to add more elements like connecting with more individuals, sharing videos and pictures of events that we had with our employees, to get more of a sense of what our company is beyond the website and the team's events. But we that's one of the main concerns for the future. How are we going to do that in a very effective way to keep our culture going and actually to keep that sense of inclusion that we have that has worked so well with Best Buddies. Every time that we've brought somebody on board, it's been it's not just the manager or the team where the buddies is working. It's actually everybody that feels this engagement and wants to get involved. And actually we get managers basically saying, well, I would like to have a buddy working with me too. Then you have the other countries. And I was like, well, why did that country start before we did? We asked before. So we have all those things that are fantastic. But again, it's because we are face to face and we've had, this human interaction. So it's going to be a little bit challenging because I think that eventually we will go back, to work in an office. But it's still not going to be the same because we're still going to have people working from home, rotating, et cetera. So it's going to be, we have to adapt and we have to make sure that we keep this very inclusive environment, not just for our buddies, but in general.
Right. And then let's dive more then into diversity and inclusion. We have adapted to this new reality, and yes, there are some struggles, but we continue to be strong and modifying our behaviors to what's presented to us. But we really need to think or start thinking about the future, right? So I want to know, what are the steps to identify new roles that are being created during this time of crisis that will be available in a post-pandemic market? So let me stay with you, Horace, and let me hear your thoughts.
Well, I believe that we're already looking into this, not just with our buddies, but overall, because really, that the overall concept of workplace is actually really changing. But I think that right now there will have to be a lot of work between Best Buddies and partner companies to actually think about these new roles, because again, there are a lot of things that might end up disappearing from a lot of companies because of how things are shifting. So I think that might require also the development of other skills, for our buddies in order to have more opportunities with employers overall. So fortunately, Dudley was able to shift his responsibilities, and move into other things, etc. Now there are some other companies that maybe don't have that vision, right? So that's where I think that Best Buddies will need to probably do a lot of more work in terms of really thinking, consulting, checking with the companies, what is that, the companies are actually requiring. And I think that really, we shouldn't be accepting that basically a function or a job or a task disappeared because of this new normal or this new workplace. I don't think that's the right answer. I think it's like, well, it disappeared probably, but okay, what else, can this person do? Right. This is like, whenever we implement a new software, right, that maybe somebody was doing some kind of work manually with Excel or whatever. When you implement the software, well, you don't make the person disappear, right? It's basically the person is now using a software and actually is able to free some time to do other things too. So I think it will have to be a joint effort between Best Buddies and companies, to rethink a little bit what are those new tasks that actually can be also development opportunities, for the employees. Like I said, buddies and nobodies, right? It's really for all our staff members, because really these are new skills that are going to be required even for our managers, right? Because one thing is when you work in the office every day, the other thing is to manage teams remotely. That's another set of skills that you need to have as well. So that's my initial thought in terms of, thinking about the future, maybe developing new capabilities and new resources and new tools for the buddies.
Yeah, Madeline, how do you see it?
I'm in agreement with Horace. I do believe that we have to rethink what work looks like, and I am seeing employers creating these what they're calling internal marketplaces, and really saying, okay, this is what needs to get done, and posting that internally, and then people can apply to those different jobs. And that's all employees, right? I think if Best Buddies is at the table as the organization is kind of rethinking what work looks like, and having conversations around what does the work look like, what's the approach, what's the support, what's the level of development necessary, and is it scalable? Right? Because that's the other big issue, is how do we make it as scalable as possible? And so I do think that there is a solution, especially as organizations are rethinking work and bringing work to people versus the other way around, people going to work. So I think there's a great opportunity to really shift thinking and bring more people from the Best Buddies team to the workplace. I think there's actually going to be more opportunities. But I will say, Gustavo, I am most concerned with those jobs at the front lines in retail and healthcare. Because our buddies are doing some of those jobs, and there's a safety issue all the way around. So I really want to think about that as well, and I think
and those challenges that come with them. Yeah. And Becky, how do you see the future?
I think what Madeline touched on earlier about leaders being held accountable is a big piece. So hopefully we'll start to see more leaders sharing their stories and their personal connection to disability, because most likely a lot of them have a personal connection. It's just finding that right poke where you can get them to talk about it. And then for them to talk about their lived experience as a family member or as someone who identifies as such, and the accommodations that could make their lives easier. Hopefully they will start thinking about those accommodations, like Madeline said, the person with a limb difference. If you're accommodating for them, you're accommodating for everyone. And I think we'll just start to see more intentional, heartfelt conversations, hopefully even from the recruiting process. Like I had mentioned in those interviews, when I first started going on job interviews, I went on 100 interviews, and no one asked me at the beginning of the interview, how are you doing today? They were scared of my physical appearance and short stature, and I didn't receive any constructive feedback on how to do better on that next interview. So ideally, we get to a place, even with the buddies and everyone working together to help each other, where we can boost people up, but also give them the support and feedback they need. And then I think we are still seeing companies move forward with their neurodiversity hiring programs and their initiatives for building offices of accessibility. And I think they'll start to realize that these offices and these efforts help a lot more people than they think. And we need to continue to have open minds and know that it'll make the workforce stronger. And then on the culture piece, with the Disability Equality Index, culture is the one category that's 20 points and every other category is 10. So it really has to start with culture and disability has to be included in that diversity and inclusion conversation, and diversity and inclusion cannot be a separate conversation than culture.
Correct. Couldn't agree with you more. Okay, the last topic that I want to touch upon is that social component, because we're going through this horrible pandemic, but we have a very strong social component underlying. So I want to ask Dudley, can you tell us about the interactions you're having with the community, how they change? Are you participating in any type of social activities online?
Hi, Gustavo. Yes, the social interactions have changed so much for me, like dramatically. I still like talk to my friends using FaceTime or just talking on the phone, or often I would just like go to like at-home events with like my church community group on Monday evenings. I also speak with a therapist at least once or twice a week using FaceTime, and also just with like sometimes Best Buddies events, including the workshops.
Right.
Dudley mentioned it before as well, but we've been having this thing called the Lunch Bunch. It's been going strong for almost 3 months now. It's a Zoom call every day around lunchtime where anyone can hop on, and there's different themes for each day, and everyone can get the chance. A lot of our participants don't actually know each other or haven't met before all this because they were all kind of doing their own thing. So this has been really great. They've all gotten to meet each other and chat virtually and meet all of our staff, which has been a really great benefit to all this as well.
Amazing. Yeah, I think this is a great moment to integrate all of our programs. And Chanel, I'd like to ask you, have there been any challenges in trying to tackle this isolation component or aspect of being locked down at home?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is access to technology. I think everything's gone virtual, but that's not guaranteed. And so diversifying the way that we are communicating and engaging with the individuals. Every call I'm on, whether it's with other Best Buddies staff or with similar organizations working in the Bay Area, that's at the top of the conversation is how do we make things more accessible to everyone involved, no matter where they are at socioeconomically or otherwise. So I think that's been huge in regards to that challenge. And yeah, so just continuing to do that. I think the things that we have done to combat that include having phone calls with the individuals, dropping off assignments to them. So if they don't have access to a computer or phone, making sure that they have something at home that they can be working on and still professionally and personally growing, and then really helping them connect with other people, whether it's within our organization or outside of our organization.
Right. Okay, so we are almost running out of time, but I want to leave our viewers with a positive note. So let's do a lightning round and share what we see as a silver lining from this situation that will keep both our volunteers and our partners motivated throughout the rest of this complicated year. So let me start. What really keeps me motivated is the resilience that we are seeing on every one of our participants all around the world, despite the situation that they're in. I think that they've been used to have all these challenges in their lives, and that resilience of still making the work successful. It's an example that we really need to follow. So Becky, do you want to share something in closing?
Definitely. I think we need to just stay committed to this work. I think there's a lot of fear that people are so focused on just getting the job done and don't think of the larger purpose. So in order to stay focused on this work, we need to keep open minds. I always tell people ask questions rather than make assumptions, because the perfect talent could be right there, right in front of you. And just continue to go out of your way to say hello to people. And a lot of this mentality of how you're doing, how can we help each other needs to stick, because that's how the world's going to get better.
Excellent. Madeline.
For me, it's really two things, and that is empathy. I think we all need to have empathy, and then the second thing is to be vulnerable. It's okay. It's going to be okay. And so with those two qualities, if we all had those two qualities, which I know all of you do, but those are the two qualities that are absolutely critical for inclusion success.
Awesome. Janelle? Janelle, do you want to share
Yeah, sorry, my dog's barking in the background, so just ignore that. The biggest thing that's keeping me going is the connectedness opportunities. I've been able to connect with people, from across the state in a way that wasn't possible prior to this. And I think with everything going on, we've also seen opportunities open up in ways that we can reach more people and spread our services further.
Awesome. Pauline?
Yeah, so like a lot of people mentioned, just all the opportunities and open doors this horrible thing has like shined light on all the different ways of connecting with people, and things that we never thought were possible before are now going on. And also just like to be kind, like, this is affecting people in so many different ways, and it's not affecting the same person in the same way. So just kind of remember that and have empathy.
Okay, great. Horace?
Yeah, well, I think that everybody, really summarized very well, things that are key for success. And from a corporate point of view, from an employer point of view, I think that, we have to continue looking into these opportunities, because, these situations also, create opportunities, and things that we can do better. But I think that the other very positive thing is that, we have this privilege of working with an organization like Best Buddies, that really will ensure, that our next steps in terms of what we do with our buddies, helping them, supporting them, developing them, etc., is going to really happen, because like I said before, I work for different companies, hiring buddies in different countries of the region, and it's been successful everywhere. It's been consistent in terms of the professional support, the communication, etc. So I think that we as employers, need to take advantage of this great organization and continue working together, to developing the future of our dear buddies.
Thank you, Horace. Dudley, you want to share a message with our buddies and volunteers out there?
I would just say the one positive thing I just had to say to everyone is just like stay positive and take things one day at a time. You are just like not alone, and just like reach out to like any of your support groups if needed.
Awesome. And on that note, I want to thank our panel for the great input that you have given us. I want to thank our viewers. I hope they learned as much as I did during this session. And please continue to watch all the great content that we're putting together for you during the Best Buddies Leadership Conference 2020. Stay safe.